Hello and welcome to this webinar tonight. I'm so glad to see that you can join us. The webinar title is Releasing the Why Questions and Self-Blame to Find Inner Peace. So before we get into the discussion, I want to sort of say who I am and introduce you to our guests. So my name is, for those who don't know, Stephanie Joy Phillips. I'm the founder of World Childless Week, which is a yearly online global event for the Childless Not by Choice community to share their stories with confidence. So I'm going to go around the room and ask you all to introduce yourself, please. So I shall start with you, Bindi.
Hi everyone. So I'm Bindi Shah. I think a few of you have already seen me this week and know me. So yeah, I live in Saltdean, which is right by Brighton. I guide meditation classes for childless not by choice women and hold writing workshops as well. And my childless journey is very layered, which a lot of you know. So yeah, I think that's everything for me for the moment. Thank you.
Thanks, Bindi. Stuart, would you like to go next, please?
Sure, thank you. Hello, my name's Stuart, and I have a blog called Zero and Happy, which is all about trying to find happiness after going through a childless infertility journey. And you might tell from behind me, I live on a boat. So I live all over.
You've got the option to move where you want to please, and I think that's a brilliant idea and an option. Thank you. Emily, would you like to finish off the introductions, please?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Monsell-Holden. I live in Hampshire in the UK, and I don't have a job to do with any of this stuff, but I did a TEDx talk 18 months ago or so about being a woman without children. And if anyone was at Storyhouse Childless last weekend, I was there as well. And yeah, I'm really, really happy to be here talking about this. Thank you for having me.
It was a great TEDx talk, really good TEDx talk. Thank you for doing that for us. Right, so we're going to break straight into it. And because we're talking about the self-blame and finding inner peace. So when you found out that you were going to remain childless for life, did you start to look inwards and question like the decisions you'd made and start to sort of place self-blame on yourself anywhere? Do you know what I mean? Because sometimes I think we do that, even if it's not the reality, we pick apart our choices and our decisions. I'm just wondering if anybody wants to bring in some points about that. If you don't jump in, I will.
I can start. I can start. I can start. So I guess you come to that decision that's it, that you know you're childless along the way. So mine, although I think sometimes it is a little bit more not that clear, but personally for me it was very clear. So it was at the end of the adoption. So it was like not going anywhere, not going further. So from that moment, I really knew, okay, I'm going to have a life now without children. So I'm going to be, I think I didn't really know the term childless not by choice at that point. So it was more like, okay, it's not going to happen for me. I'm not going to have children. And from that point, yes, there were those kind of reflections on the past. So why hadn't we tried more? Why hadn't we gone perhaps down the fertility route, fertility treatment route? Yeah, so many why questions early on in life as well, around relationships and things. So one of my other reasons for not having children is the not finding a partner till I was into my early mid 30s. So it was that kind of thing of why didn't it happen? Why did I make all of these decisions that I've made along the way? So yeah, definitely those questions had come in.
It's tough, isn't it? Because you just look around and you just start analysing every choice you make.
Yeah.
Even if those choices were out of your hands, you somehow seem to bring them into your own head and sort of twist them into, reasons that never existed. And it can be so difficult to then chuck them away because they seem to sit, if not in your conscious, in your subconscious, ready to come out and pounce at another time.
Yeah, and even reasons like if I think about that relationship reason, I wouldn't have even thought about that. I was married. There's like no need really to think about those times as a reason for childlessness, but they come in, like everything comes in. The adenomyosis as well, of course, came into it as well. So it was just like everything, every decision, anything related really from kind of when I was early 20s onwards, like, well, why did I do that? Why did I do that? Why did I choose that path? So yeah, definitely all coming in to kind of like accumulate with this decision. And actually that decision to not take us forward for adoption was really out of our hands. But it was just that real self-blame, like bringing not only that decision into me, but every other decision that I had made as well, or not, or that had been made. So even those that were external to me that I hadn't made, but they all came in for the self-blame.
It's hard, I think, especially with the adoption, because it's so often the question that's thrown at us.
Yes.
And like you say, but it's took out of your hands, and then you're like, literally like, what can I do now? That's like a dead end, as you say. That was definitely, with some people it's not. It's like you drifted and suddenly realizing perhaps time has passed, age has gone on, and you can't get your dreams fulfilled. But when it's other people making those decisions, and yet we still make it our fault, which is, so unfair and unreal, isn't it? But we don't at this time even have the sense to sort of sit back and reflect on it. We just absorb it. And I think that's, so much damage that we could do to ourselves. Yeah. Would one of you, Stuart or Emily, would you like to add your thoughts on the subject?
Yeah, sure. I mean, short answer is yes.
Yeah.
It at the end of our sort of fertility journey, so it's myself who can't have children. I am azoospermic, so I don't have any sperm in my semen essentially. And we'd always agreed that we most likely wouldn't have IVF if we couldn't have children naturally for our own reasons, but because broadly speaking, we didn't really want to go down that path. And as soon as I found out that I couldn't have children naturally, instead of it just being like, well, that's the agreement we made, it was, well, my body's betrayed me and I deserve this. And I struggled with that existentially. I struggled with that in terms of just moving on with life for a sort of best part of 6 years, really. And I blame myself for it, even though I know now, thinking back to it, that is just what how it happened.
It's just biology, and we can't change
Yeah.
what we're given, can we?
No.
But for some reason, I think we can, especially when there's so many people pushing, especially for like that products. Take this, try this. It's worked for this person, it'll work for you. And it's like, well, you're probably selling fresh air tablets that have got absolutely nothing in them. Do you know what I mean? They're any use. And stop pushing it on someone when you're probably a parent. You're probably not a medical professional. It probably doesn't work, and your figures are wrong. And even if it did work for some, it doesn't mean to say it'll work for everyone.
Yeah, and we found, or I found particularly, whenever I try to speak to a medical professional, and this isn't, I think we're very lucky to have the services we have, but whenever I tried to speak to anyone, it was always like, well, there's IVF, off you go. And no one ever just sort of said, do you want a bit of counselling?
Yeah. And that's tough, isn't it? Because you just want someone to help you and explain you. And the people who are in that care profession don't always have the care or the knowledge to support us when we're at our rawest, when we're getting these responses that just totally end a dream, and you're reaching out for help and it's just not there. It's scary. It gets that final for us. Yeah, totally understand that. Emily, did you want to share a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I relate to everything that Bindi and Stuart have just said. And also that you were saying, Stephanie, about like you go over and you think, for me it was less so much why, but I was like, what if I had done this? What if? And I think that my biggest why was just simply like, why me? Like, why us? And I really struggled. Obviously, I struggled with loads of things when I realized this wasn't going to be a straightforward path for us. But the biggest thing I struggled with was like, why me? Because I felt like a healthy young person. I'd never had any health problems before, which is I'm very fortunate for, but it just came like a bolt out of the blue. And I just couldn't believe that I had this identity of somebody who couldn't conceive. It just felt so, I mean, it sounds, I hope it doesn't come across as like, well, I just want to be honest with the group. Like I was just like, but I'm a healthy person who succeeds at most things, and I just couldn't get my head around like why me. And then there definitely was quite a long period where I was angry at other people. Like, why had no one told me that so many pregnancies end in miscarriage? I did get pregnant once, and when I went to the doctor, he just told me like, don't eat raw meats, don't eat like deli meats, and don't drink, and see you in a couple of months. And I was like, why didn't he tell me what symptoms to look out for miscarriage? Why didn't, I don't know, so many whys. I mean, and a lot of them were, I was blaming other people. And it's not that those things weren't true, because I still think the doctor probably should have told me other things, but I went through like a period of like just trying to figure out like why. And really, there wasn't one moment where I realized it wasn't going to happen, because when we realized it was going to be a struggle, we were like, okay, well, this is a problem that we can solve. But then it felt like everybody around me was getting pregnant. And I was like, why is it just me? And I realize now that it wasn't just me, but in my world and in my circle, it really was pretty much just me until I felt brave enough to speak about it. And then even the people who did have children in my circle, once I started talking about my struggles, confided that they'd had miscarriages, that it might have taken them 2 or 3 years to conceive, but you just don't see that. You just see people with babies and think, why is that not me?
Yeah, I think it's hard, like you say, when you see everybody around you seems to be having it, and you've got family and friends, and they all seem to have families, and you look at them and go, what did they do different that I didn't do? Or I know they did this, whereas I didn't do that. I was better, I did this, and yet they still managed to fall pregnant and conceive. And you're comparing yourself and thinking, did I do this worse? Or I did this better? And how come I still didn't manage to do what they managed to do? And the comparisons, they just they just fill your head. And it's so hard, because I said we're invisible. We don't know there's a child's community until we're part of it. And when we do, it's like, oh my God, it's there. But until that moment, all these whys and questions are unanswered, and nobody seems to be able to help us, because we don't know who to ask. And it's a real stickler. It's like, it's tough.
And Catherine's just said, like, IVF is so expensive, and it's not an option for many people.
No.
And it's also, I don't actually know where Catherine's based, but in the UK, it's like, it depends where you live as to whether or not you're eligible.
Yeah.
And one of my big whys was, why didn't we try sooner? Because I got married in my early 30s, and we were like, oh, we got loads of time. And then by the time it came to me needing to essentially be referred to have IVF for us, I was like, I think I just turned 35, and they told me that I was too old and I was just not going to get any treatment. And I was like, oh my God, why didn't we start sooner? Because then if there was a problem, we would have found out sooner, and then I would have got IVF for free. That was a really big regret and a big why that I dwelt on for a long time, because on top of all of the emotional pain, there was this huge financial burden, which we took on ourselves. And, we were fortunate that we were able to, and we had some support, but that was a really big why for me. It was like, why did we wait so long?
Yeah, there's not enough information out there, is it? Because at school, you get told how not to fall pregnant.
Yeah.
You don't get told what to do if it doesn't work out. You don't get those ideas. You don't get told that at 28, your fertility starts dropping. At 35, my God, it's dropped off a cliff. Whereas the news is celebrities and everybody is like, oh yeah, you can fall pregnant easily in your 30s, in your 40s, or even older. And we don't actually know what's going on behind the scenes, how much money they're spending, how many doctors are involved, and everything else. And you think all it portrays is people getting their happy endings. You don't see that it's not going to be like that for you too. Yeah.
I think one thing that really came through as well from just from the medical part of it was during the adenomyosis, or when I was diagnosed, was quite early. So it was 2013. And really, there wasn't it was very difficult to find any information about it as well. My GP didn't know anything about it, but the consultants, they knew that we were trying for a child, but there weren't any question marks. Like even from them, they didn't say, oh, well, this condition would affect your fertility. And now I know, of course, it would have. And I don't know if it's because they didn't have a lot of information. They just didn't really know, or there wasn't enough research done with adenomyosis. But it was just that kind of thing of, oh, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And then you're kind of in with that false sense of, oh, okay, it'll be fine. They're the experts. They say it'll be fine and don't worry about it. So then you kind of want to trust them, or you do trust them, and you're like, okay, well, it's going to be okay. And then when it doesn't happen, and then later on, and then when it doesn't happen and you're still kind of blaming yourself, and in that kind of, you're blaming yourself. And then it's only after when you look back and you think, but there's all this research now on it, and it does affect fertility. So why, I spent that time blaming myself, but actually the consultants, could have done better really for us to say the truth if they knew that, and they possibly didn't. But yeah, so that was like a big one for me, I think, around the just the medical kind of thing around that. Yeah,
I think if I look at it for myself, I could think, well, why did I spend so long in an abusive relationship in my 20s, where I went on the contraceptive pill to stop falling pregnant?
yes.
But I was in an abusive relationship that I lost control of who I was and everything around me. So when I broke free, it was the first time I could break free. So that why is because of him, not because of me. Do you know what I mean? But it's still like, why did I spend so much time there? And then when I met my husband to be, it was in my early 30s. He's a few years younger. So he didn't want to settle into, trying for children yet. I was still hesitant of making sure that this person was safe. Do you know what I mean? Because of everything I'd gone through in my 20s. So we didn't try to conceive until I was after 35. And I made a joke and said, oh my God, I'll be classed as an old mum, thinking it's funny because, again, I had no idea that fertility rates at that point in time would have been so low.
Yeah.
And then by the time we sort of eventually went to the doctors and went to the hospital and got the results, I was actually 39. And at 39, they didn't say you can have IVF, but they said, come back in 6 months after you've lost some weight. And I knew when it got to those 6 months, I'd have 4, maybe a little bit more months before I hit my 40th. And that was the deadline I knew for where we lived to give free IVF. And I thought, hang on a minute, they're going to do tests. They're going to check this. They're going to put me on medications. The medications are going to go right. And I looked at the time frame, just thought, it's not going to happen. It's just not, because there were literally months to make this work. And I thought, it's not going to happen. But the blame I gave myself, because I literally went away, found comfort in food, because it was the only thing that didn't question me and everything else. But for years, it was like, why didn't I try to lose the weight? Why didn't I, why do other people who were bigger than me, because I wasn't anywhere near as big as I am now, why did they force it, pregnant so easily? What was wrong with my body that I couldn't fall pregnant, being overweight, when people who are, massive compared to me could do? What was it they had that I had? Do you know what I mean? Like I said, and then you question yourself and all the whys. Why didn't we try earlier? And it's like, because I didn't feel safe earlier. But you forget about the logical reasons and you just focus on the negative.
And I'd really like to say that is, for me, a really important part of this whole conversation. It's essentially self-compassion and understanding that you did or did not make choices. Well, you made choices or not, when you were younger in previously, that were right for you at the time. And with the benefit of hindsight, you might have made those decisions differently. But actually, you've got to have the self-compassion to think, I did my best in that moment. And there's been a bit of chat about teenage pregnancies and how you see them differently when you're somebody as an adult who wasn't able to have children, like, oh, it's a blessing. And I definitely have had that thought, like, oh my God, maybe I should have, it wouldn't have been so bad if I had a child with my first boyfriend, all that kind of stuff. But actually, I know, if I'm being really honest with myself, that that would not have led to happiness. Like, I wanted children at a specific moment in my life, when I was ready, when I felt financially able to have children, when I'd met my partner. And unfortunately for me, the things did not coincide. And I just have to I have to really remind myself that, yeah, it's easy to be like, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? But like you, Stephanie, you wouldn't have, it wouldn't have made you happy, even if you think it might have done now, because it's the thing you want.
Yeah.
I just try to really like remember that I did my best, and I can't change it, but it's hard.
It is. It's trying to realize that what you did at that time was what you did at that time. No matter how you reflect on it, no matter how many questions you raise or self-blame you get in there, you can't change it. You cannot change it. So with that in mind, do you think it's time that has helped to lessen the impact and maybe remove some of that internal blame and those questions? Or is there maybe been a certain moment when you realize something, oh my God, and something that you thought had power over you suddenly was dismissed and taken away? In fact, I'm going to go to you, Bindi, because you shared something recently about what gave you that release. So I'd like you to share that story if you won't mind.
Yeah, yeah, very. I'd love to share it. So some of you know around my adenomyosis kind of story, basically ending up in a hysterectomy in 2019, and before the hysterectomy, having a very long period of an adenomyosis flare-up, which basically led to 200 days of bleeding. So, before, yeah, and in between, obviously, appointments and, and blood transfusion, just things happening during that time, but no appointment, no date for the hysterectomy. So when I saw the themes from Steph this year in June, one of the days was childless healthcare with a little question mark, childless healthcare. And I knew, oh my gosh, this is my day. I'm going to write about this journey. I'm going to write about these 200 days. And I already had the title, right? It's going to be called 200 Days. I'm going to write about it. Then it, got into August when I actually sat down to write the piece before the deadline, of course, for submissions. Sat down to write it, got all of my information. So I had my diary. So I journal a lot. So it's personal journaling. So I had all of that. I'd read through all of that. And I'd actually, at the time, I did have to make a formal complaint to the NHS via PALS. So I had all of that as well. So I had all the documentation. I had it somewhere in the computer. It was all archived. I brought everything out and I was reading everything through and thought, right, I'm going to start writing this piece on these 200 days. So I started writing it, and I actually did write something. It wasn't easy to come. Nothing was really coming. And I wrote something and I read back through it. And actually, Jay did read it as well. So he can say in chat he did read it. And it was very factual. And it wasn't like my writing. It was very much like this happened at this time, this happened at this time, this happened at this time. And I was reading through it and I was like, where am I in this piece? Like, where's my writing? So I am a writer, for those who know, or those who don't know, I should say. And I was like, where is me? Where's my voice? Where's my writing? This is not me. What is this? What have I just written? And I was like, what is going on? And then I realized that I was like, I don't have the emotions that I had then. I was like, where have they gone? Like, I was like, I'm not that same person I was then, but I also don't have that emotion, those emotions. And then I realized that they had gone. So I'd let go of the anger. I'd let go of that, the deep whatever was in me. I mean, the anger, the frustration, the rage. I mean, so many, yeah. I mean, 6.5 months, 200 days, all of that stuff. And I was like, really? I was like, it's gone. And I just could not believe it. And I was like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe it. I mean, I can still feel it now, how I felt. It was just so amazing, exciting, joyous. I was like, I can't believe this. Like, I'm not that angry person anymore, which I was for a while during and after. And I was like, I'm not that person anymore. So that's basically what I wrote instead. I wrote, look at this, look at me moving forwards, aren't I wonderful? That kind of thing. Like, I mean, I honestly, I couldn't believe it. So yeah.
No, because you actually messaged me, didn't you? And you were like, oh my gosh, thank you, because if it hadn't been for that daily topic, you wouldn't have addressed it and realised
no,
that it had gone. And yeah,
I really wouldn't have, because I hadn't really been thinking about it. And I guess that was it, because it had passed. I mean, I don't even really know when it had passed, those feelings. I hadn't been thinking about it. It wasn't in my mind. It's 6 years now since the hysterectomy. So, I hadn't really been thinking about it. I mean, I had in between after that, after 2019 for sure. And yes, I was so thankful to Steph. I was like, Steph, because without that day and without me trying to write something about it, I wouldn't have known that, yes, I have come that far. Yeah.
But I think I've always said sometimes you don't know you move forwards until you look back. And you just think you were holding on to this stuff. And then all of a sudden, when you actually came and faced it again, you went, oh, heck, it's gone. It's gone. You know what I mean? And the revelation and the surprise and the shock and the happiness and the glee, really, that was affected you. You know what I mean? That all of that weight is just suddenly gone. So yeah, you found that moment, but for all you know, that took years to get to that moment as such.
It took years and it took a lot of work. It's not like it just magicked one day to the next. I mean, I have done a lot of work on myself. And I guess when we work on ourselves, we don't. So I do a lot of writing. So that's one of the ways I work on myself, and my meditations. So as Emily was saying as well, the self-compassion, kindness, gentleness, all of that really coming in through so many layers of my journey. But when you're doing the work, you do the work and you don't know necessarily, unless you keep reflecting on it or keep realizing. So I think it's like what you said, Steph, as well, about, is it the time? And I actually think it's not necessarily the time. I think time does help, because some time passes so that you're not perhaps that attached to it. But I actually think more than time, it's the actual work that you do towards yourself. So it's the grief work, it's community work, group work, the exercise, the walking, the writing it out, the meditating, all of the creative things, all of the wonderful things that we need to do first of all, and then hopefully we start enjoying as well along the way. Yeah.
Thank you. Stuart, would you like to go next again?
Sure. First of all, that was really beautifully said, by the way, Bindi. And I sometimes think, because sometimes I think that I'm lucky in a way, because my journey was just literally finding out I couldn't have children, agreeing that we weren't going to go down IVF, and then it stopped. But I struggled a lot with, like, whether or not we were making the right choice, whether or not whether or not I was making the right choice, whether or not I knew my partner didn't want to go through IVF, but there was still a bit of me that still wanted children. And I also knew at that point that I didn't really want to adopt, at least not yet. And I just think, like, sometimes I guess there's this view that as men, because we don't go through things like IVF quite so directly. Okay, I would have had to have had a surgery, but we don't go through all the injections and all the labors and, all the potential sorry, I'm getting choked up just thinking about it. All the potential bad things that can happen to you physically and mentally. Like, we'd already been on that roller coaster for 6 years, and we knew that we were ready to get off. But I mean, no, for me, it was, I struggled with it for a long time, and I know it's a really tedious thing that comes up quite a lot, but for me, it was going through the COVID pandemic, because I'd literally gone through like 4 years of just ignoring it, putting it to the back of my mind, but being really angry about it, and just throwing myself into my work and my guitar building and my other things that I do as a bit of escapism. And then when COVID happened and everything just had to slow down, suddenly I had all this time. I started doing a few creative things that I was doing just for myself, not to make any money or anything like that. I started working in care as well, and I found that I had this great capacity, despite not having children, I had this great capacity for love and care and taking care of somebody. And in a way, that was a good thing, but in another way, it also made me question whether or not I did want to have children still. And that kind of then pushed me to actually ask for counselling.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of I think that's kind of the main big turning point. But another one that I would just cite very quickly is also going to the 2000, I think it was in 2016, the Fertility Fest in
In London with Jessica Hepburn.
that's the one.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I heard people talk about infertility as grief.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just started to get that ball rolling of like registering it as grief. And I think just registering it sometimes is enough to kickstart it.
Yeah, because we don't even realise we're grieving, do we?
No, but it still took me a long
Yeah.
time after that, and I still ignored it for ages.
Oh gosh, yeah. No, like I say, it comes to us differently, and getting that first acknowledgement that we're grieving is a bloody hurdle to get over, because even we question, what the hell are we grieving if we haven't lost something?
Yeah.
But it's that future, that dream, that child that, or children that we dreamt of.
Yeah, and you think
in a
about it
different way.
now and you're like, well, I spent not my whole life, but I spent a lot of time planning that future and planning that life and imagining it. And you get that sort of relationship of those Kodak moments where you imagine yourself playing with your children or whatever, and they go from being like nice little imaginary things into being almost quite tormenting.
Yeah. Well, it's things like if you've held on to a childhood toy or a book and you imagine passing it on, or playing games that you will view your favorite games with your kids, and you have all these imaginary scenarios in your head, and then you see other people doing it and you're like, I can't do that. And the things that you held on to, it's like, well, what do I do with it now if it's not going to be used by my children? So yeah, it takes a long time to get realized, but once we realize we're grieving, I think that's a really big hurdle to get over. And as you say, it is sometimes time and, like I said, counselling as well, finding the support that you need as an individual. Some of us, you've been in more creativity and community, and you've mentioned counselling, and it just shows we all get drawn into different areas to find that support we need to help us start to release all the negativity that we're holding inside. Yeah, thank you.
And I think also when we come to the point of knowing that we're grieving, that's also kind of in with that acceptance piece of knowing, okay, this is it, not going to have children. And then that acceptance and then the grief, I don't know, I guess they kind of come together and merge, or then we realize, oh, we're grieving a life that we thought we would have. And then we start on the acceptance journey. I don't know, just keep going then with the healing aspect of it.
Yeah, because I use acceptance. Some people go, well, I'll never accept it. And it's like, I'm not saying accept that you're childless.
Yeah.
But accept the life you are in this moment in time is the life you are in.
Yeah.
And you can't change the path. And it's that acceptance is never saying, I accept that I'm happy with it, I accept it, I'm embracing it, or anything like that. It's just accepting that we can't get the dream. So we have to hopefully find new dreams and new ideas, but it's accepting where we are in the present and the now. Yeah. Emily. would you like to share your perspectives, please?
Well, I mean, I totally agree basically with everything that you guys have said. When you're saying, Bindi, that it's not, I don't think it is specifically about time. I think it is about yourself. And I mean, it is about time, like you say, because these things take time. You can't just decide one day that you're going to accept it and then wake up and accept it. Like, it's a cycle, it's a process, and it will be longer for some people than others, and that is based on all sorts of things. For me, just a practical thing that did actually really help me, because there are so, like, if I look back now, there are so many stages to the journey that I went on to be where I'm at today, which is like actually weirdly happy with that. I'm not gonna say I'm happy I haven't got children, but I'm happy with where I am. And one of the really useful things I did was when I went on a reignite weekend that was organized by Gateway Women, and I kind of didn't really want to go because I felt like, oh, I'm actually on the process of working through this myself. I'd done a lot of work, you know, like you were saying, Bindi, like a lot of personal work, and Stuart, like counseling and various things. And I was like, am I just going to get dragged back into a negative place if I go on this weekend? But it was really healing for me because it was the first time that I was just in a group with real people who totally got it. And we were total strangers at 9 a.m. And by 11 a.m., we were like crying into each other's arms. And I was like, I didn't think I wanted that. I was like, I don't want to be crying. I don't want to be wallowing. I just want to move on. But it was really useful. And I guess it started me on meeting other people who didn't have children, whether it was through choice or not, really helped me to start to move on, because I could see inspiration and hope in the people who were perhaps further down the line than me. And particularly, I found a lot of hope from people who chose not to have children, because actually listening to them rather than saying, yeah, it's different for you, I'm not ready, but actually listening to why they chose not to have children, I actually found quite interesting, because I was like, oh, actually, you're helping me see some of the opportunity. And I didn't want opportunity, but I was there, so might as well just try and get curious about it. And that was really healing. And also seeing the people who perhaps sadly hadn't been able to work through any of this stuff. I was like, okay, I don't really want to stay in that place of like anger and resentment for my whole life either. So sort of essentially leaning into the grieving process and just allowing myself to feel whatever I felt. And there wasn't one moment for me. It was a long process. And a bit like you said, Bindi, like at some point I just looked back and I was like, oh, I'm really okay with this. And I never thought I would have said that. Like, in the depths of trying to have a child, there was just no way that I could imagine that I would be able to actually genuinely be okay with the fact I've got children, but it's happened. Yeah.
It's quite a revelation, isn't it, when it's some, and like you say, you can't always put a time frame on it.
Yeah.
But it's good again because you ended up going to the Gateway Reignite weekend. And again, it's a different way of connecting and finding a way to start the healing journey.
Yeah.
It's like admitting to the fact that when we're grieving, we are bitter, we are angry, we are resentful, we are jealous, and all those things. And they're completely normal part of grief. But again, we think it's us being weird. And people are, you know, why can't you be happy for me? Why can't you come to this event? Why can't you do this? So again, there's more of those why questions that are just put on us by other people. And it's like, because that's how I feel, I'm grieving. I'm not sure I realise that. You certainly don't know that or recognise it and respect it. So it's hard and it's dark. But it is, and as much as we hate to say it, time is a healer, and things do lessen because you learn to live with your grief rather than letting it sit front and centre and you can't see past it.
And it was at that reignite weekend, another probably the long-term most helpful thing that I got out of it was being able to like understand what grief is and how it looks. And I didn't know about all the different stages of grief. I'd never really thought about it in too much detail. I guess I assumed that grief was linear and you start off really, 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 really sad, and then at some point you are fine. And I was like, oh yeah, it's not at all like that. And being able to recognize in myself after that weekend and long into the week, and even now, oh, this is this stage of grief resurfacing, and it's okay because grief is cyclical. And even though I'm okay with where I'm at now, I still have moments where I'm like, you know, there's something that will pang, and I'm like, okay, that's all right. Like, that doesn't mean that I've completely regressed. I'm suddenly not over it. I think I was expecting to be like, I need to get over it. I need to have like a definitive line in the sand. And once I accepted that what I really needed to do was find a way to incorporate this thing that had happened to me that I found very upsetting into my life, so that I could still lead a positive life, even, and not pretend this thing hadn't happened, but just incorporate it into my story. And once I thought about it that way, and that was thanks to the Reignite weekend, I was like, okay, this feels like a different challenge to like just trying to suddenly feel okay about something, which is not okay.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that really like just that kind of thing, I want to be okay, or just, you know, this has happened and now, you know, I want to move on, I want to be okay, I want to fix it. I do think that's also a little bit because, you know, I do the meditations, and I think with Eastern philosophy there's that more nuanced part of it, whereas with Western life or Western philosophy it is like fixing things, or, you know, solutions and fixes. And for something I think like grief work or working on yourself, it is that we're all growing through life. So, you know, we're all that are the way I see childlessness, or my childlessness, is it is a lifelong journey. It is, you know, it's never going to, I'm never going to not be childless. So it is, you know, that will be my identity. But it's more like I can move through life, or move through my childless journey and get to a better place with it, where it's not the only thing that I'm thinking about all the time, or that I'm angry about or grieving about. So just getting to that better place, and that can take kind of as long as it needs to, as long as I know I'm doing the work towards it. And I think that's really, you know, that kind of that fixing, or that we want it to go. We want it to go. We want it to go. I do think that's also living, you know, the world that we live in as well, where it is about, you know, fixes all the time. But rather than fixing, it's that quick fix, which is like, yeah, it's not going to happen quickly, but it doing the work and things, and along the way, it can happen.
Yeah. I think if you do a quick fix, then you're going to miss out on so much that you actually need to do. You're just sellotaping over what's really deeper. And I think, like you say, I always think of it as a dance: 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And you are going forward, you just don't always see it. It's a little thing, do you know what I mean? And for me, like you say, I think it's time has gradually done it. But the moment I realized one element of my grief that had gone is there was something that seemed to be a lot of discussion. I don't know. I think this was before COVID, it's a few years ago now. And people were talking about why they were childless. And people were saying, you know, they hate the fact that it's unexplained infertility, which is the final conclusion for me after everything else, or the bundle of reasons for being where I am. And I thought, yeah, what was the reason? What was the reason? There must be a reason, because the sentence I still remember this day was like, if he manages to get you pregnant, it's highly unlikely you'll carry full term. So, and I thought, well, hang on a minute. How do they know it's highly unlikely I'll carry full term unless they have a reason? And I was like, there must be a reason. And maybe I didn't hear it. Maybe I missed something in the meeting, and I got a bit like wanting to know the answers. So I actually phoned at my doctor's and said, look, I'm just wondering, is there any chance you can get a copy of the notes that came back as a report from the hospital, and a doctor can analyse, you know, tell me exactly what they mean? And she was like, yeah, we can do that for you. And our local doctors is amazing where we are now. And she says, it might take me a few days, but I'll definitely get back to you. And she did get back to me. And she says, I'm really sorry, I can't find your notes, because everything's been updated to the system, and the notes at that time, because like I'm like nearly 59 and this happened when I'm 39, so 20 years ago, those notes were paper written notes. They weren't, and they're paperwork, they're filed. So they're all filed upstairs in the loft, and they're all in boxes. They're not on the system. And she goes, I can't find them. She goes, I've spent ages looking and I can't find them. And as she said it, I suddenly thought, actually, I don't give a shit anymore. I don't care. Do you know what I mean? And I said, you know what? Don't worry about it. And she went, no, no, no. And she was really worried. She was like, no, I can go up again, but it'll be a couple of days. But I promised to go up again and look through. And I said, really? Don't worry about it. I said, it's fine. And she was like, are you sure? Are you sure? And she was the one who was more worried about me. And I was like, no, because I suddenly realized at that moment in time, no matter what she told me, it wasn't going to change what happened at that time. There was nothing she could say to change where I was today. And it was a case of, oh my God, I really don't need to know. But it took asking and thinking I needed to know to those people to realize I didn't care. I really didn't care anymore because I am childless for a myriad of reasons. And the results of those tests on the paperwork, that was almost just one of them. That was just the end result, not all of those results. And it was like I say, it was like, oh my God, I don't actually care. And this is bizarre, but it was freeing in that moment to know that. And I think that's what it is when you suddenly have these moments, you're like, oh wow. And it's like eye-opening. It's just refreshing as well in a way. Do you know what I mean? So it takes away so many of those negative feelings. So saying on that and saying that we've all come to this point in different ways, what is it if, you know, if negative thoughts arise now, do you find it easier to actually deal with them and prevent them taking a deeper hold and bringing you back downwards again? What is it? How do you deal with them? Should we go back to you, Bindi? We've been doing a circle all night, so we might as well. That's on my screen.
Yeah, so similar things. So the meditation, the writing. I think also having a good self-care practice so that you do have the things which you do anyway that you know make you feel good. So I will go on my walks, I will write, I will meditate, so that when new things do come up, okay, yes, I feel them. Yes, I can be like, whoa, you know, the anger can come or just whatever's going on. And then more reflecting on it and really kind of realizing how I'm feeling and letting it go a little bit easier than perhaps I would have before. It doesn't mean I don't feel and things don't impact, because yes, they do. And I think we're all human and things do impact us, but it's just kind of like knowing that we have the tools, that we can work through things a little bit easier. I do use journaling a lot. So if things come and I'm just like confused and all my emotions have come on, then I'll write them down. And as I'm writing, I'll be processing that as well and just kind of letting the feelings out that way. Yeah, talking to people perhaps, but I think more than that for me, it's like just figuring out what's going on internally. I think that works well for me.
Yeah, it's like seeing it coming and you know what to do when it's coming. And
yeah.
Thank you. Stuart, you know I'm coming to you next, huh?
Yeah. Similar things to Bindi, really. One of the activities I got from my counsellor was something called worry time, which is a bit like journaling in a way, but it's like a really focused, like 15 minutes of writing down everything that's worrying you, and then 15 minutes of just sort of quiet reflection, almost, of just sort of looking at it. And it's amazing, you can have these things that are just tormenting you, and then as soon as you write it down and then you write like, well, why they're stupid, or not why they're stupid, but why they're not as big as they seem. They just seem so small and manageable. So I found that really good. I do journal a little bit. I have got into a bit of creative writing and things like that, and I find that really freeing. And the other thing I think about as well, as I mentioned before, the Kodak moments, where you get these moments of like almost, you see, you know, something will pop into your head and you think like, well, I never get to have that. And I just think now sometimes like, well, okay, sod it. I get to have so many other experiences and I get to make them myself. I wouldn't have the life that I have now if I had children. And that's something that we've made as an active choice. And yeah, it means we miss out on something else, but that's life. You're always going to miss out on something. And sometimes I just blast some death metal into my ears, and that's great as well.
So we had a webinar yesterday and somebody was saying pretty much the same thing. So that's quite funny that you've come up with that. But yeah.
It's like having a shower, like having a really hot shower, but with like brutal music in your ears.
If it works, who cares?
Yeah.
It's finding our own thing, isn't it? And that's brilliant that you know what you could do, and it's like a cleansing bath for you. Sound bath, see? You could be a gentle sound bath, but no, you go for the heavy core stuff. I like it. Emily.
Yeah, I think just following on from all of that, I would sum it up for me as I just made a conscious decision, and I do think actually listening to what everyone's saying, it requires intention, and it requires you to go on a conscious journey with yourself. You're not going to get the answers from other people of how you're going to move on from this. You might be inspired by like, oh, that person's said something, but it's ultimately you, and whatever your method is, like journaling, loud music, like, and then you might have multiple methods. Like for me, it's walking and time in nature. And one of the things when I came to the end of my IVF journey, I was like, okay, well, all of my friends are like not here because they've all got young children. It also happened to be COVID, but I think that's almost a bit immaterial. And I was like, right, I'm by myself a lot of the time now. And I just had, well, I didn't have to, but I chose to get curious about who I was and reconnect with things that I used to love or that I might enjoy and had never tried. And I just, I think from the outside looking in, people might say that I just became selfish, but I basically started to create a life that full of things that I like. Now, of course, my life is not perfect. No one's life is. And I'm not pretending that it's as straightforward as saying, if you haven't got kids, you've got loads of time and money and you'll be fine, because that's not the case. But I asked myself the question, what will not being a mother allow me to do? And by sort of almost trying to make it like a rational thing, like what, just hypothetically, like what are the things I could do? It got me on a course of like, yeah, just curiosity in myself. And that means, to answer your question, Stephanie, that when these things come up, I know that I have been on an intentional journey, and I can look at things in my life and think, okay, if it had happened, I might be blissfully happy. I might not. I don't know the answer to that. Because for a long time, I did sort of think, okay, well, maybe if I'd had a child, I would be really unhappy and my marriage would have broken up, or a million reasons why it didn't happen. I came to accept that maybe I would have been happy, but as long as I'm happy now, and I've got I do things that matter to me. And to be honest, I think I am now much more myself than I ever have been, because it's actually a gift if you choose to take it, to take that time and that space to get to know yourself and to explore the things that are going to make you happy. And I don't think everyone gets that chance. So if you have the chance to do it, it makes it easier when the bad stuff strikes, because you can think, do you know what? But I do really love. And to Stuart's point, I just think it's so true. Like, if you have kids, it's not easy. Like, I think something that's personally helped me quite a lot, weirdly, is hanging around all of my friends with kids, because I actually see them as how, I mean, it sounds glib, but I mean it. Like, how hard it is, and how I have so much that my friends with children don't have. They feel all sorts of terrible things that I don't feel. And I'm not saying that makes me think, oh, thank God I didn't have children, but it puts it into perspective. So it's not all the Kodak moments, to Stuart's point, because I think for a long time, it's very easy to think that being a parent is all like, cozy Christmas mornings and muddy walks and, all the cute, lovely, easy stuff. when the reality is that actually that's probably like not even 5% of it. And that's not to say that you might be listening to that thinking, yeah, but I want it all. And I get that. But for me, it's definitely helped seeing the pain and the hardship of the people around me who have got children.
Yeah, so you've used basically the negatives of parents, and you've used the plus side to look at the child free as well. So you've used the
there's pros and
other
cons.
stories.
Yeah, I couldn't choose which side it ended up on. So all I can choose is how I deal with what has been dealt to me.
Yeah, no, it's good, like you say, your perspectives have widened to look at more options, and you were sort of like, okay, I can focus on what's good with what I've got. Yeah, which is a positive. And for me personally, I find that I can still have those moments when you're just low and you're like, what are you crying for? I don't know, I'm just sad. And that is just me and emotions and whatever, and hormones and menopause and stuff, being sad. But there's other times I'll feel sad and I know it's to do with being childless. And I'll think, where's that come from? And I question where it's come from, and quite often I think, I watched that TV program last night and it had this in it. And I think, now I know why I feel like I do. So I let myself go through the emotions, but they don't hit as hard or last for as long because I understand what they are and how I've reacted to them. And I accept the way I'm reacting is normal, and it's good for me to get those feelings out. So yeah, I find I sort of sit back and look at, from the outside at what I'm feeling, what I'm going through. And that helps me. So it's like my own little bit of counselling in a way, sort of thing. But yeah, so that's self-reflection. And but it's interesting because, like I said, we've all used different things to actually help us through the moments and to find the positives and release the negatives. And it's not just one way for anybody. It's really good. Bindi, I thought you were going to say something then.
I was just because you'd gone to the other side, like with the question, a little bit. I can't remember now. It was like just going to the other side. And I thought that's also, so I wrote a poem and that was also going kind of to the other side. Because it's a little bit about why not me, like why, yes, I can be childless, that kind of thing. So I'm going to read this poem, and it was written, I think, about 3 years ago now. And it's called The Why Me is Leaving. As I move forwards, the why me is leaving. It can be anyone. Childlessness can affect anyone. We have gorgeous, beautiful people here, so why not me? And why not them? And when we come together, we are wonderful, and we are thoughtful, and we are kind, and we are compassionate and understanding. We are us. And us can be anyone. It really can.
Perfect.
Thank you for
Perfect
letting me
timing as
share
well to
that.
say that. It's perfect timing. And we are coming to the end. So I do just want to say, if anybody's got any other thoughts or suggestions or ideas that they can just leave with people as a positive for the end of the discussion today. So was there anything else you wanted to add to what you've just said, Bindi, about your poem?
I would say take your time with your healing. Sometimes you can't see it immediately. So, do the work, do the good things that are good for you, and allow yourself to see the results later.
Yeah. Thank you. Stuart?
I know what I would like to say to myself if I was to go back in time and speak to myself 9 years ago when I just found out I couldn't have children. And I would just tell myself to be kinder to myself, to be friendlier to myself. I would say that you're going to emerge out of this a stronger, more confident, more empathetic and kinder human being. And just be nicer to yourself in the process, and you might emerge out of it a little bit quicker.
Yeah, self-care. Self-care, prioritizing. Yeah, thank you. That's really beautiful, actually. Yeah. Emily?
I don't really feel like I can add much to that. It's exactly what I would say to anyone. both of what you've said. Be kind to yourself, give yourself time, do it in your own way, and just be curious with yourself. And somebody asked about like practical tips in the questions. I would say, like, if you feel inclined to, just find other people who like engage with this community. Just you're not alone, and it feels really lonely, but actually it helped me a lot to just find other people who maybe hadn't had exactly the same experience as me, but other people who didn't have children, regardless of how they felt about it and how they came to it, was absolutely crucial for me.
Yeah.
Mm.
But it is, isn't it? It's a case of we're all different. We've all shared different aspects tonight. Do you know what I mean? There was no pre-planning of what we were going to say, but we've all shared different aspects of what's helped us, what we felt. But the main thing is that everybody here, everyone in the chat, everyone in the video is different, and we cope with things differently. And grief is not linear. It does go back and forth like a ping pong ball, and around the corner and up and over the stairs and God knows where, but it goes here, there and everywhere. There is no deadline. There is no start line. It's just a case of dealing with it moment by moment sometimes, if you can't go day by day or week by week. And then hopefully, like us, there gets to a point where you suddenly have that revelation or look backwards and think, oh my goodness, times have changed. I feel different. Because I would say that most people, if not all, will get there. There's just no time frame. We don't know when it's going to be. We can't give set solutions, but we can say it's happened for us and we hope it's happened for you. Oh my God, end of the week, here I go. Always happens. Well, I'm getting through this webinar about the tears, but I obviously haven't made it. 2 minutes too short. But yeah, so just hold on to hold on to knowing that you can do this. You are not alone. You have an amazing community around you, online, through counsellors, through books, through podcasts. And there is something that will pull you in. 1 thing, 2 things, 10 things. And it's a case of looking and finding them, whether it's in nature, whether it's in heavy metal music, whether it's in writing, whatever it is, look there and find something that gives you that spark of joy, that little moment, that glimmer. God, like a red old going tomato face. But yeah, you can get there and you're not alone in doing it. And that is the biggest important message I can say to you. So on that note, before I turn into a complete tomato, I am going to say thank you so much, Bindi, Stuart and Emily, for finishing this. God, I'm a nutter. For being here tonight and sharing so many beautiful thoughts and stories, and the painful moments too. They have all been incredibly important. I haven't been able to read the chat, but I've seen it is on fire. It has not stopped moving all night. So I'd say that people are finding positives within your words and reflections, and they're mirroring what you feel and what you've said. So thank you yet again. And we shall end this webinar. So good night, love and laughter to everybody. And thank you for being with us tonight.